come once again to discuss things.
Let's go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part2. Joining me today is Rasco of Rasco's Mind Life. Hello, Rasco.
Hey.
Hey. We are, of course, continuing Geeky Gentleman Holiday Month, but we're also continuing fan film reviews, and Rasco picked this Christmas-themed fan film. Rasco, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about Batman Gotham Christmas.
Indeed. So you picked this just because it was one of the few things you could find, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, this is not very good. I'll just be upfront about it. I did not think that this was very good just at all. Like, there are things that I think are admirable about it on some level, but then at the same time I'm like, it was a clever idea to do it that way, but you still did it poorly. So I'm not going to, try to kid glove it. I think this was pretty poor job.
Wow. Okay, I actually kind of, disagree.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is, one of the best fan films we've ever reviewed. But something about this really impressed me. And that was that it goes the opposite route of what I always say I kind of like in fan films. It's just right based on what your limitations are going to be. And I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, so they clearly went the opposite route. Very quickly you learn that when you see Batman gliding down from a platform to the Batmobile within the first 30 seconds. And I'm like, whoa, okay, so they're just going all out. All right, now then I'm looking at it a little bit differently, right? Because obviously they don't have the budget to make all of this stuff look real, perfectly integrated. It's not exactly, it's not exactly brilliant, but it was so weirdly ambitious where they're just no, we're just going to write a script and we're just going to make it exactly how we want it to be. And we're going to just have it's they're giving the impression of what they want to make if they had the budget for it. And something about it was really impressive on that level. Now, I'm not going to say that that is true of everything, because definitely not. The acting is not very good. The dialogue is, by and large, not very good. As a story, it's more so just, a couple things that they think would be cool in, a movie, and they kind of, threw them together. And it's inspired by a lot of different things, and it's just kind of pulling from, Nolan Batman, but also BVS music is in there and stuff like that. So, and there are scenes that are kind of BVS parallel scenes and stuff like that. But something about this was really entertaining, and I understand that it's definitely not very good as a story, and it's not technically impressive the same way that something like the Dragon Ball Z fan film is, where it looks really, really great, and you can.
Well, I think that's unfair. Let me put it to you this way, Rasco. I think the Green Lantern Endgame fan film had better effects integration than this.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And that was the one where they just cut to, still images of the guys flying.
Yeah, that was not better than this. This is way more impressive than that.
I mean, this is impressive in the fact that they shot a lot of it on blue screen, and so they're able to actually have their actors moving, but still a lot of this is just...
Can I say one thing that I need to say, or else I'm going to forget it, because it's a really interesting point that I've been thinking about a lot the past few days, and this fan film gets this right in a way that a lot of fan films at this caliber don't get this right. When you're making a movie, it's with... Something I've just been thinking about recently is that so many people forget that the only thing the audience is going to see is what is literally in front of the camera. So oftentimes people think in terms of well, how can we have a scene where they're in a warehouse? I don't live in a warehouse. I don't have access to a warehouse. But what they understood in this fan film is that if you just put someone in front of something and you don't show the greater context of where they're standing, you can make things seem like they are in the location that they're supposedly set in to some degree. That's like something that they really understood here that I just think is like
Oh
there's
no, I
things
mean the
about this
framing's
that really
good.
are clearly not like clearly so much had to go into this, I feel like.
No, I agree. I mean, the framing's pretty good, and there's even a fair amount of animation and custom compositing. For me, it's like a lot of the composited elements though are just like really really weird. Like the one that I go to because I thought the Batmobile actually was really well integrated, even though you could tell that's composited from other stuff. But the one I go to is like it's when he's in front of the ace or the warehouse that like the drug deal goes down at, and like it gives you an establishing shot and shows like a semi pulling away, and like the semi is clearly just cut out of a still image, and they just composite animate it moving forward.
Yeah.
And like on some level, I'm like, okay, that's actually reasonably clever to do. Here's the problem though. The way they put the semi in frame, you can see the tires aren't moving as it rolls forward. And that's why it's a problem. Like, if they'd thought ahead enough to go, okay, yeah, we're going to frame it in such a way where you can still see it's a semi, you can still see it creeping forward, but we're not going to show you the tires, so it just maintains that believable imagery. And there's just, like, a lot of stuff like that. Like, when they're toward the end and they're at the fundraiser for Harvey Dent, they have like just the same image of balloons, like just a cluster of balloons, like floating up toward the ceiling. But the thing is, one, it's the same image like 3 or 4 times, and 2, it's not even a real image of balloons. It's a toon kind of PNG. And so there's just like a lot of stuff like that where I'm like, you know, it's reasonably clever to get away with just compositing and layers like that. I do think that's a good idea for how to do things in a fan film. And honestly, in the very beginning, I was more impressed by it. Like, when we're just getting all the shots of the Batcave, I was like, you know what? This whole stitching everything together, it's cheap as balls, but it's actually kind of working. And then as soon as he leaves the cave, like when the Batmobile shows up, I'm like, okay, yeah, wow, that's actually really impressive. As soon as he leaves the cave, it got really, really bad. It just got like laughably bad, and the acting, like, one, we already have, you know, the younger actors problem. 2, the voicing feels like it's dubbed in, and then just the dub isn't very good. Like, the whole conversation that Batman has with that drug dealer is really, really bad. Just like, I cannot understand anything anyone's saying. And then, like, I thought that was probably going to be the worst of this. But then there's the conversation Bruce Wayne has with Superman, and that's somehow harder to listen to. So I mean, I'm glad you like this, because I really expected me to have to be the one to defend this on any level. So you are taking up that. This is the hill you're dying on, sir. So I put the ball firmly in your court.
No, yeah, everything you're complaining about is totally legit. I just literally don't care. Like, it's just so charming. Like, I just like it a lot. Like, I would much rather watch this than there are some serious fan films that look much better that I don't find as entertaining as this fan film. You know, like there's the fan films that I think are like genuinely really, really good. Like, for example, that Freddy Krueger fan film that we talked about recently. That one was like really good, and it was kind of like good in a way where it didn't have there wasn't like any caveat. There wasn't like, well, I mean, it's good in like a thrown together, homemade, cheesy kind of fun way. No, like that was just good. And then there's this kind of fun where it's like, it's not great, but it really impresses me because it's actually like, there's like a method to it. Like, you can actually see there was like skill required to make it. And that like they were clearly thinking about like, all right, we can only get so close to what we want. Let's just get that close. And they did it. That's what I think.
Yeah, see, for me, I think that this could have been a much better fan film if it just limited the focus in a more subtle way. Like, you could get away with this whole composited environment thing and have it actually look reasonably good. I legit think so. And it's just they do too much. Like, they do the Batcave, then they do Ace Chemical. I've been watching a lot of Penn and Teller Fool Us lately, and Penn will occasionally bring this up, and I think it's a good point just ever talking about effects. When you're doing effects work, whether it's, practical, digital, what have you, the more you do something the same way, the more times you use the same method, the easier it is for people to figure out. So if you're going to do something that can be done multiple different ways, if you do it a different way every time, it looks better. It naturally looks better to the eye because your eye just has less time to catch on with it, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, I kind of had a little bit of that, again, in the Batcave in the beginning of this, when, like, at first when he walks in, it looks like maybe there's some kind of practical effect behind him to make it look like an actual stone wall, or maybe they actually shot it against, like, real rock. And then, it cuts to the imagery of bats and stuff, and like, okay, that's actually looks like nature footage, and then like stock footage of caves, and then there's like a waterfall and composite all together, and like, it all looks like different things composited together, but it works because of that. But when you just keep doing that again and again and again, like the Red Hood origin thing, that stopped looking good really quickly. It gets to be too much, and I feel like you could have done a lot more with this methodology if it had just been more limited in focus. If you hadn't tried to tell, you're right, they wanted to tell this story, and they wanted to get as much of it on the screen as possible. But I just think this is too long. Like the scene with the drug dealers, that's just the prologue of The Dark Knight with Batman, right?
Yeah, that's probably my least favorite part of that, is that scene is just kind of like, we're just taking from The Dark Knight right here.
Yeah, it's The Dark Knight mixed with the warehouse fight from Batman vs Superman, and
yeah,
and it's weird that like Batman just starts like walking towards gunfire, like he pulls like a Superman at some point. I'm like, okay, well, if his armor is good enough to just take shots, then why didn't he just do that earlier? That was weird. Also in that scene, like, you can see the orange cap on some of their fake guns, and that was kind of like, okay, if you don't want to paint over it, fine, but don't frame a close up on it. That was a bad decision. There are ways to work around these things. Like, even if you don't want to paint over it, electrical tape, just black electrical tape, and don't show a close up. It's not hard. I can't be too forgiving of that. That it's not a big budget thing to just spray paint black electrical tape, duct tape and a Sharpie, masking tape and a Sharpie works better. Just literally the cheapest kind of way you can turn an airsoft rifle looking into a real gun. And again, or just don't show a close-up on it. Like, those, I can't be kind on that one. That is just a really, really fundamental it just screams laziness to me. And wow. I feel like a dick. I hate talking about these fans. Like, this is so weird for me, because I'm usually the one that'll be very defensive and try to give the benefit of the doubt to a lot of these things. This one, I can't. I honestly cannot be too forgiving of this one.
Well, you're just a hater, and I like it, so.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the story. So again, yeah. I think the Scarecrow bit is, well, it's not even Scarecrow, it's just drug dealers. I think that was pretty flippin' useless. I thought it was a neat idea to adapt The Man Who Laughs and kind of connect it all to Christmas. I thought that was kind of a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of the scene with the dead bodies, which is more or less adapted straight out of The Man Who Laughs?
I thought that scene was kind of cool. It was kind of creepy. I thought it was kind of funny when you see like the weird fake rubbery hand of the dead body.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, but I thought that was funny, like, again, kind of like a charming way. I was like, that's funny. That scene, I mean, it was fine. Again, what I was it's kind of an example of what I was talking about, where like all you have to worry about is what literally is going to be in the frame. Like, so just think about that. Like, think about how you can show as little as possible in order to tell the story that you want to tell. It's really funny because they really utilize that, especially in that scene.
No, I'd agree. I think it was framed really well. That is something I can give credit to. This frames things, like it's way too many close-ups, and that would be less of a problem if this just weren't super long. But it is framed well. Like, I don't ever feel like I'm not believing the location enough. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting to do The Man Who Laughs though as like the Joker origin, because there are so many Joker origin fan films that I've seen, and I've never seen any that even touch The Man Who Laughs, which is like not the Joker origin, but the big Joker, like Joker's first caper kind of thing. I thought that was kind of neat to do. I thought it was an interesting choice to set it around Christmas.
I think it's kind of cool how they okay, I think like what they were kind of doing with this is maybe they had like they've seen all of the movies up to now, because this came out really recently. I think this came out
this came out November.
Yeah, so I feel like they've probably like seen the DCU stuff. They've seen, you know, what Nolan did, and they have like their own idea for like, wouldn't it be so much better if they made a movie like this? And this is kind of like their like demo reel almost, where it's like you'd show it to like a group of execs, like, we're gonna combine all of these things together. We're gonna have some Superman in there, and we're gonna borrow from BVS. We're gonna have some Dark Knight gritty like drug dealing stuff in there, and we're gonna have this Joker story, and you know it's that's what and it's gonna be at Christmas too. That's the most important part. And I just think like that's what this is. It's kind of like a demo reel for like a new Batman movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of rips off too many things like specifically. But I feel like it wouldn't have to translate it to like. I feel like you could make this kind of this pitch into a movie and not rip off these things from previous Batman movies. Like, you probably do that.
I mean, I think you'd have a hard time with it, because just so much of it feels like just like the things you're talking about. It's just so reminiscent of these other movies. I don't know what your pitch would really be aside from.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, when you act like just that take away what you've already seen. Like, it doesn't have to be literally like the warehouse scene from BVS, like the warehouse fight scene. Like, when you actually make the movie itself, you know, and it's almost like they were just using it as like a reference for this. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, at one point we should probably talk about like the kind of fan trailer short films that come out, like Superman Doomsday, because that could be an interesting discussion. I don't know, man. I just can't really like get behind that. The idea of adapting The Man Who Laughs, the idea of setting it at Christmas, roping Clark Kent into it is kind of a neat idea. I don't know. This feels like really just. This feels just very youthful. I mean, like, one of the guys had braces in here, so I'm pretty sure these guys are all teenagers. And this feels symptomatic of something that I think a lot of young people do, which is when you want to create, you want to just recreate as opposed to doing original things. And I mean, yeah, it's a fan film, so you're kind of already shit out of luck there, right? But I don't know. I think of something Jim Morrison wrote at one point. Jim Morrison, the lead singer for The Doors, since I'm sure young people are listening to this, he at one point wrote that in high school he kept like just notebooks and journal books filled with quotations from poetry that he read, songs that he liked, novels that he'd read. He just like written down lines that he really, really enjoyed. And he had just notebooks and notebooks and notebooks full of these. And then after high school, he threw them all away. And he said it was the best thing he ever did, because if he hadn't, he doubted he'd ever be able to make anything original. And I don't know, I kind of went through a similar thing. I don't remember if it's still up or not, but I made a shitty fan film that's kind of sort of adapting one thing and playing a lot of clips and things from other stuff. And this is better than that. I will freely admit, if it is still up. Maybe got pulled due to YouTube copyright. But yeah, it's just so derivative that I'm like, yeah, you could maybe adapt this, or I could just go watch those other things, and it'd be.
I'm not saying it's what they should do. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's just what I'm reminded of. Did you think it was weird to put Superman in here at the end?
It was kind of weird, but I don't know. Like, it was. I don't know. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny when he's like. I just thought it was funny when he was like, "I was talking about Lois Lane" or whatever, and he's talking about getting to like close to the Daily Planet's #1 reporter. It was just funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost want to like write out the dialogue for this and just read that and see if I like it better.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like the performances, and we always talk about this, bad acting is just something you have to tolerate in fan films. So like I'm not going to complain too much about the acting, but I'm just like, man, enunciate. Like especially if it's dubbed in, I don't quite get why the audio quality is so poor, because it looks dubbed. Do you agree? Do you think a lot of it looked dubbed in?
Yeah, a lot of it does. Maybe most of it, but I'm not entirely positive. I'm not gonna say that they did that for all of it, but maybe certain scenes.
Okay. I don't know. Just like that's just a weird thing to me. This is that rare fan film where I think it fails both technically and on story at the same time. You know, usually what you'll have is like you'll have a really ambitious story that could actually be kind of good, but then they just don't have the technical prowess to do anything with it. Like this story is just kind of nonsensical all over the place, and they also kind of technically can't pull it off.
It's fair.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like I'm taking joy out of ripping into this. I just thought this was really bad.
But you are.
Yeah, I totally am. I'm such a bastard. We're gonna get hateful comments on this, and I know it because it's so new. They're still attached to this, and then they're gonna be like, "Oh man, someone's reviewing it," and it's gonna open, and I'm just gonna be like, "Man, this is really bad." And they're gonna be
Direct
heartbroken.
the hate to Ian. Direct
Yeah.
the hate to Ian.
I'm sorry. Again, I don't take joy out of hating these things. I don't know, Rasco. We need to fill a couple more minutes. You take us somewhere.
What haven't we talked about with this?
Music?
I'll talk some. Well, okay, the music's like certain scenes. It's just pulled from the scene that it's kind of referencing, like in the warehouse fight scene. But I will say this: the editing was pretty good. In regards to when they cut to what and like why they cut to what they cut to, it's all good. Like the beginning where he's suiting up and it's doing like a kind of like a classic suit up scene, that was a proper edit of how you shoot that.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
And then, and like they had to be good at, they had to know what they were going to do in the editing when they shot this, because there's no other way to work with such limited resources and do something like that where each frame is all you're worrying about. You're not worrying about building a set. You're worrying about making sure that what's literally behind this person's head is what it needs to be. When you're operating that way, you kind of have to know what you're going to be doing in the editing room. And I feel like when they shoot that scene, it's pretty much all like beat for beat what kind of happens in the warehouse fight scene, but like sometimes it's different because they obviously don't have all of the resources from that fight scene, so things are changed. But I feel like there was like a nice velocity that you could really like feel some of the hits, and the way it was like, it just felt like fluid enough. And I don't know, I just felt like the editing was not a problem. Like I feel like the editing was pretty competent here.
I'd reasonably agree with that, especially with just all the different layers of video that you're dealing with to get some of this stuff. Like in the beginning, you've got the Batmobile passing cars on the street, and the other cars are composited images, and like those cars are police cars, so there's lighting effects on top of the composited image, and it blends together reasonably well. I wonder what the Batmobile was. Like, it just doesn't look like a toy. And it was one of the only ones where, if I'm remembering correctly, the wheels moved.
It might have been a toy. I don't know. Maybe it was like an RC car.
Yeah, it must have been a really good quality one if it was like Hot Wheel or whatever, because it just didn't look like that. Maybe it's just the way they shot it. It's pretty good scale and everything. But yeah, I'd agree the editing is reasonably strong here, particularly given the number of layers you're dealing with. All right. Anything else you want to talk about with this one, or you want to move on to ratings then?
I think we can move on to ratings. Okay.
I'll go first, and I'll be the asshole. I'm going to give this a 1 out of 5 news reporters who's literally holding a script to read a live broadcast on camera.
Well, I have a heart 3 times as big as Ian.
You cannot give this a 3. You can't.
I will give this fan film a 3 batarangs out of 5.
That's trash. You cannot give this a 3. I refuse. I'm sorry, but that is way too high. This is not above. This is a 2.5 at best.
This is a 3. This is a solid 3.
You're just trolling me at this point.
No, I liked it that much.
All right.
The extra point is a heart point. It comes from the soul. Like, I just liked it.
Okay. Sigh. Just sigh. All right. Next week we'll be talking about another Batman thing. Usually we don't like to do the same character 2 weeks in a row, but unfortunately it worked out that way. So we'll be talking about another Batman Christmas themed thing, though it will not be a fan film. We're going to do a motion comic. We're going to talk about Batman Noel, unofficial motion comic by Odd Tale Studios. Everyone, I hope you tune in for that, and I hope the people that made this fan film don't hate me. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I'm the Beta Male Cock.
And we are your geeky gentlemen. And we will be discussing things.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas.
Yeah, mainly pretty good. Apparently,
Okay.
LA is burning to the ground, but
Yeah, I've noticed.
apparently, I say this because I don't know. I feel like again, I'm seeing a lot of celebrities that I know are not being affected by this complain about how they're being affected by this. Like, just because it's just like I'm looking where there's like people being like, "Oh my God, the fire's right outside my house." I'm like looking, like I can see where they're living from here, and I'm like, "You're fucking lying, dude! Like, you're fucking lying." It's like all on the other side of the Hollywood Hills,
Oh wow.
but
That's
they're
pretty
making
bad.
it seem like it's like central LA on fire. But I mean, it is bad. I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying there are people that are milking the opportunity for sympathy on Twitter. It's really funny.